Hero Time, Chapter 26, Overreaction. Kevin frowned at the radio in his hands. He shook his head and played back the message. SOS! We're under attack! It's Tennyson! Chen is back! The message cut out, and Kevin sighed before he picked up his phone. There were only a few numbers in it, but it had a lot of fun extras. He opened one of his specially made apps and frowned at himself. The tech, alien of course, allowed him to access the bugs he had planted in different devices. He'd been keeping an ear out for DNAlien activity, but right now it was the Forever Knights who were interesting him. For the past 3 nights, they'd been broadcasting emergency signals claiming to be under attack by Jen. But it couldn't be. Jen had finals this week and had told him that he was in charge of patrols unless something big came up, or he found another nest of DNAliens. Gwen was in a similar boat, but seemed less worried about passing than Jen was. But then again, Gwen's parents knew about her powers. Jen had apparently not told her parents about the Omnitrix yet. He hesitated a moment before he tapped in the code to access the bug he'd placed in Jen's phone. She'd called her father. He was apparently out of town on business. That had been last night, around the same time as the distress signal from the Forever Knights had started going off. She'd been texting Julie tonight. The conversation started with Julie quizzing Jen on Shakespeare quotes for some reason. But they stopped about an hour ago. Kevin sighed heavily and exited back to the regular functions on his phone. He tapped one of the 2 numbers and waited as it rang, and rang. This is Jen's voicemail. You know what to do. He frowned at the phone and ended the call without leaving a message. He tapped the 2nd number. This one picked up after 2 rings. Kevin, what's up? Hey Gwen, something off is going down. I need your help. I tried calling Jen, but I think this might have something to do with her. What do you mean? Not sure yet, but there's been a lot of radio chatter and her name keeps coming up. I want to look into the latest one. Pick me up in 10? Sounds good. See you then. Kevin nodded and hung up. He pulled the collar of his shirt up to his nose and frowned as he sniffed. He hopped into the shower and put on a pair of fresh clothes. Slipping his plumber badge into his pocket made him smile. He could carry it without feeling bad about it now. He was actually a plumber now, just like his dad had been. Now, if he could just get up the nerve to talk to his mother again, maybe she'd be proud of him. But a niggling doubt at the back of his mind kept him from going back. What if she was afraid of him? What if she thought he was a freak? He shook his head and hooked up his radio to the console in his car. He could track the signal using that. You think she's trying to protect us again? You don't think she's trying to protect us again, is she? Kevin asked as they drove away from the trashed Forever Night Castle. The only indication of what had done it was Jet Ray flying off into the night. Gwen was frowning. I don't know. It's something I could see her doing, but we're literally all deputized plumbers now. I think she knows we can handle ourselves. There was something else that was bothering him, though. You tried to call her back. I've never seen her completely ignore you before. She always responds somehow. I don't get it. Gwen drummed her fingers on the door. Drive faster. Kevin put his foot down. What do you think's happening? He asked it completely seriously. I don't know. That's what scares me. What do you mean? Gwen was silent for a moment as if choosing her words. We've had problems with the Omnitrix before. One of the aliens, I don't know how it worked, but it escaped the Omnitrix. Tried to kill us all. Kevin looked over at Gwen, eyebrows raised. Which alien was this? Ghost Freak. Kevin shuddered. Never liked that one. Me either. Jen's still afraid of it. Why? It's gone, right? Imprisoned by the plumbers, so yes. But what if it's happening again? What if that's why she didn't answer? Kevin shook his head. The Forever Night we talked to said she kept asking where she was, though. Like asking for herself by name. Did Ghost Freak ever do that? Gwen shook her head. No. Ghost Freak was always able to tell the difference between itself and Jen, but I never understood how the Omnitrix worked. Maybe it's different now, and Jen and Azimuth are the only ones who really know how the Omnitrix works, and most of the time I swear Jen's guessing. Kevin pulled the car up to Jen's house. Gwen nodded to herself. Good, Auntie Sandra's at work. I never asked what either of your parents do. Uncle Carl does something with insurance, and Auntie Sandra is a nurse. My dad's a lawyer, and my mom's a librarian. Wow, so the two coolest people on Earth come from some of the most boring parents. Never tell Jen I said that, by the way. Gwen laughed and stepped up to the door. Then she noticed Julie's bike. Huh, Julie's here. Kevin frowned. Why would Julie be here if she was out kicking Forever Night ass? Something's not right here, Gwen stated and hammered on the door. Jen wasn't expecting anyone else to show up at her house. Julie had her English book open on her lap. Which play is this quote from? To be or not to be? Aye, there's the rub. Jen grumbled as Ship crawled across her stomach and curled up there like a cat. Is it Macbeth? Julie shook her head. Hamlet. Jen groaned and was almost relieved when someone started banging on the door. Oh, thank God, a break. She stood, taking Ship with her. The mechamorph had firmly bonded to her shirt at this point, so she didn't bother to try and hold him up as she made her way over to the door. I'm coming. There's no need to break down my door. She opened the door and raised an eyebrow at Gwen as Ship nudged her hand for pets. Hey guys, what's up? Kevin stepped into her house in front of Gwen, between the two. You know, I know power can go to a person's head, but I didn't expect you to snap a week after the team was made officially official. Jen frowned at him. What are you talking about? Jen, we saw you flying away from that burning Forever Night castle as Jet Ray. What were you thinking? You went way overboard with that attack. Jen raised both of her hands. I have no idea what you're talking about. I've been here studying for my English final all night. Ask Julie. She got here an hour and a half ago. She's been drilling me on Shakespeare and Jane Austen for the past hour and a half. Ship crawled up Jen's shirt to her shoulders and beeped as if agreeing with her. Is it smart to let a galvanic mechamorph climb on you like that when you've got the Omnitrix on? Gwen asked as she stepped the rest of the way into the house, Kevin careful to stay close and between the cousins. Jen frowned. What were you talking about burning Forever Night Castle? And Ship has been warned off touching the Omnitrix. He's a good boy. He listens. Ship nodded and snuggled back into the front of Jen's shirt. I got a bunch of distress messages over my FTL radio over the past few days. Your name keeps coming up, saying you're attacking. Jen sat down hard on the couch. Well, she hasn't been out tonight. I've been here for the last hour and a half, and before that she was finishing an essay for history. It was due online at 8, and she just barely made the cut. Jen nodded. And you know English is my worst subject, and history isn't far behind. I'm a science girl. Gwen nodded. She could practically see the gears whirring in her cousin's mind, running through the possibilities. She shook her head, reaching forward and snapping shut her copy of the English textbook. If I'm going to deal with a mystery, I need some chili fries. Sorry we have to cut the study session short, Jules. Julie nodded and whistled. Ship hopped off Jen and into Julie's arms. It's okay. You have space cop duties. I'll see you in class tomorrow. Even if it kills me. Julie laughed and gathered up her things. Ship beeped and Jen reached out and scratched it under what passed for its chin. If Shakespeare hasn't killed me yet, I don't think it will, Ship. I'll be fine. Ship blipped out a purr and then Julie laughed. He really does like you. Ship settled down into Julie's bag. He likes you better. Julie waved as she left, and Jen's face fell into a more serious expression. What do we think is happening here? Fill me in on the drive to Burger Shack. I was serious about the fries. Jen had known things were getting tense with Gwen and Kevin. Hopefully that bubble would pop soon, and they would just date and get it over with. But she hadn't thought they would ditch her at the Burger Shack, especially when they were the ones accusing her of attacking people at random. She had been feeling a bit off for a few days, but nothing that bad. She just really wanted pickles and had been sick a few times in the morning. She figured it was nerves about finals. When she finally caught up to them, they were at a castle. How did no one question the amount of castles around Bellwood? How the Forever Knights ever managed to say a secret society was beyond Jen. And they were talking to another her. They were identical in every way. She landed between her doppelganger and her team. Who are you? The Omnitrix flashed, and there were two identical Jens looking over each other. Jennifer Tennyson, you are a most difficult being to get in contact with. The voices were almost the same, but Jen's double spoke with almost an accent. I am Albeda of the Galvin. Jen raised an eyebrow and gave her double the once-over. You're a little tall for a Galvin. Kevin snorted behind them. Gwen shot him a look. What? It's funny because Jen's short for a human but tall for a Galvin. I got the joke, Kevin. This isn't funny. Jen ignored the other two. Do they always behave this way? Jen nodded slightly. That is of no consequence now. I created the Omnitrix, and I am here to take it back. Jen raised both hands. Remove your Omnitrix and give it to me. Okay, back up, Albeda. First of all, this should be the only Omnitrix in the universe. Secondly, a Galvin called Azimuth made it. The double, Albeda's face twisted into an expression of pure disdain. Azimuth is a liar. I made the Omnitrix. It is prone to catastrophic meltdown. You must remove it immediately or risk destroying yourself and the very fabric of the universe. What's the call-off code? What? The code to call off the self-destruct. What is it? Bright green eyes blinked into bright green. How do you access Waybig? The Galvin turned human, blinked again. How do you take off the Omnitrix? Jen folded her arms and waited. Well? You would not have the code for the self-destruct. Waybig is always accessible. Remove the Omnitrix. Albeda said it with all the conviction of someone who believed themselves to be telling the truth, but Jen shook her head. Wrong on all three fronts. Try again. Start with who you are and why you're here. Albeda scowled at her for a moment. If you will not give up the Omnitrix willingly, there are ways to take it from you. That was when she attacked, turning into Jet Ray and snatching Jen up off the drawbridge before either of the others could do anything about it. The fight was quick, Jen taking down the double, forcing her on the run. She turned back to normal, and the three of them took off for Kevin's car. How did you know she was lying? Jen scanned the skyline for Jet Ray as Kevin drove, glancing back into his rearview mirror. I do know the code to deactivate the self-destruct. Azimuth thought it would be a good idea after the last time I almost blew up the universe. Kevin snorted and laughed loudly. Gwen punched him, luckily not with the rock she'd picked up to track Albeda if they lost her, which they appeared to have done. While Gwen concentrated, Jen kept talking. Waybig isn't currently accessible. She twiddled the dial on the Omnitrix and paused. Then she kept talking. Azimuth gave me Waybig to help defeat Vilgax. And even I don't know how to get the Omnitrix off, short of cutting off my hand, and honestly I'm not sure that would work. My hand would probably just stay stuck in it. Kevin shuddered at the thought. If she created the Omnitrix, she'd have been able to give at least the code to call off the self-destruct. That's not a bad thing to have, as it really just prevents the universe from going boom. Kevin nodded. We do like it when the universe doesn't go boom. Jen rolled her eyes. Got her, Gwen exclaimed, making them jump. Kevin turned as Gwen commanded. Chapter 27, Meet Again. Getting stuck to the wall with packing foam by her cousin's evil alien twin was not something Gwen had ever wanted to say happened to her. Jen was an only child, so she'd never expected it, but even Gwen could admit that there was some merit in watching her cousin fistfight herself. Not the fight between aliens, though that was sort of hard to follow as it ranged out of her view, but watching Jen kick ass as the regular human. Grandpa Max had taught his grandchildren many, many things. He loved them all dearly, and ever since the girls had learned about the truth of the universe, he'd taken it on himself to teach them how to fight. Gwen, being the more controlled of the two, had favored the discipline of martial arts. Jen, though, Jen liked to cheat when it came to fights. Once before, during a fight with the Forever Knights, one of them had accused her of having no honor. She'd responded that 9 times out of 10, honor in a fight got you killed. She favored MMA more than the traditional styles. And it wasn't often Gwen saw her let loose in a fight, but with Albedo, it seemed Jen had decided it was cool to let off a bit of steam. When Albedo lunged, Jen used the momentum against her, tossing her past her with a simple shove and step out of the way. But she didn't leave it there. Her foot connected with the back of a pair of jeans, sending Albedo flat on her face. The human gal then growled and lunged again. This time, the foot made contact with Albedo's jaw, sending her spinning to the ground.
Jesus, Albedo, lay off her!
Gwen blinked at Kevin and snorted a laugh. He raised an eyebrow.
Your cousin's getting her ass kicked, and you're laughing? Are we sure you haven't been replaced with an evil copy, too?
Gwen shook her head. That's Jen kicking Albedo's ass, for the record. I'm a black belt in karate, but Jen prefers MMA. She's never really gotten to let loose in human form around you before. Kevin blinked as Jen twisted one of her double's arms up her back. Yeah, well, I don't want to hurt anybody most of the time. Fighting myself is cathartic. Is that a bad thing? Gwen shrugged. Probably. The redhead had no chance to elaborate as green lightning crackled as Jen made to restrain Albedo's other arm. Their Omnitrixes were stuck together, and no matter how they pulled, they wouldn't come loose. Gwen didn't understand what a DNA feedback loop was, but it didn't sound like a good thing. Then the green lightning sparked again, and Albedo shifted. It was freaky to watch. The color drained from Jen's brown hair, turning white, nearly silver. The eyes were the next thing to change. The green seemed to shudder and crumble, leaving behind blood-red irises. Her jacket suffered the same fate, as well as her Omnitrix.
No confusing those two now,
Kevin stated as Gwen managed to break him loose from the foam. He absorbed the stone of the wall and dug his hands into the foam that surrounded her and ripped it down. Gwen dusted herself off as Jen wrestled with her negative double. How do we get these apart? Jen asked through gritted teeth, keeping Albedo captive by her Omnitrix arm. If one of us could manage to die... Gwen really didn't like that answer, but it wasn't another moment before they got the Omnitrixes apart. Another flash of green light blared, and Albedo cowered slightly. Oh no, he's here. Kevin raised an eyebrow at Albedo's exclamation.
Who's here?
Azimuth. Both voices spoke at once. Albedo sounded nearly frightened, but Jen sounded happy. Indeed, the small gray figure, clad in green and black, appeared and smiled at Jen. I am here indeed, and I am quite unhappy. He hopped up onto Albedo's arm and spun a complicated turn on her now red Omnitrix, and pulled the dial out completely. Albedo fell to her knees. I warned you there could be only one Omnitrix. I warned you that if you tried there would be consequences. He nodded to Jen, not taking his eyes off Albedo. Jennifer's DNA is the default setting for the Omnitrix for safety purposes. It became yours when you copied the programming of the Omnitrix, making your knockoff. You've abused your intellect, and in doing so proved yourself a lesser being. I will not trust the fate of the galaxy to a lowly human. She has done more for this galaxy than you ever will. You have endangered yourself and others with this stupidity. Your punishment will be to be trapped as you are, stuck like this for the rest of your life. Albedo gasped. You can't do that! Surprisingly, her statement was in stereo. Azimuth looked at Jen as Albedo dissolved in light, shrieking her hatred for the inventor as she vanished in the teleporter. You can't do that, Azimuth. It's cruel. No one should have to be trapped as something other than themselves. Azimuth shook his head and hopped onto Jen's hands. There are times I think you are too kind-hearted for what you do. Jen shook her head. I've been stuck as something I'm not before. I know what it feels like. It's not right, Azimuth. The Galvan nodded slightly. Perhaps. I will see what can be done for Albedo. I would like you to note that she does not care for your life in the slightest. Jen shrugged. She's not the first, she won't be the last. Doesn't mean she should be trapped as me for the rest of her life. Azimuth shook his head. I marvel at the minds of humans every time. The logic isn't there, but you have compassion to the point of mere stupidity. You are truly the only being worthy of the Omnitrix. Jen shrugged. So the universe isn't in imminent danger from the Omnitrix. Only if you lose it. Azimuth paused. You know I'm not the only one who thinks you're the universe's best hope for the Omnitrix. Jen frowned. Who else? Azimuth smiled. Oh, that's a surprise for another time.
You have many trials in the future. Be ready.
With that, he dissolved into light, and Jen shook her head. Didn't even get a chance to ask why the watch changed, or why I have a bunch of new aliens. Azimuth never answers anything I ask anyway. Not with a straight answer. She shook her head again and stalked off out of the trash store. Kevin shook his head.
Is it often that the first thinker just pops by?
He asked. He wasn't a Galvan, but he was aware of just how smart Azimuth was, and how revered by an entire race. It wasn't like him to take time out of whatever he was doing to pop by a backwater level 2 planet. Azimuth? He's got a soft spot for Jen. He'll never say it aloud, but he likes her. I think he thinks she's spunky, and she is, but she cares more than he ever could. He looks at the world through a lens of pure logic. Jen sees more gray area than he does. She's an emotional being. She's got something Azimuth doesn't. Heart. Kevin nodded as the two of them followed Jen out of the store and back into the car. Hey, can we stop at the grocery store? I need more pickles, Jen said from her spot in the back seat, twiddling the dial on the Omnitrix. Kevin shrugged.
Why not? Not like today could get any weirder.
Gwen laughed. You get used to this level of weird eventually. Jen shook her head. To a point. You learn to roll with it, but it never gets any easier.